We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Chaf Amud Aleph Mesechet Yevamos. This is Yevamos Daf 120a. And the previous Amud, the Gemara was discussing Rebbe Lazar's opinion in the Mishnah. Rebbe Lazar holds in the Mishnah, let's say you have a situation where these two women, two sister-in-laws, both say that their husband died, and then they both go ahead and they perform Yibam with other existing brother-in-laws of theirs, and then those brother-in-laws die. So Rebbe Lazar says, well, since they already performed Yibam, then you can assume that it is for real, that their husbands died, even in pertaining to the other one, and therefore each one is exempt from Yibam. In other words, we believe by each one not only did her husband die, but we also believe the brother-in-law died, and therefore they're each allowed to marry other people. And so Rava asked a question on Rebbe Lazar. He wanted to understand, why is it that we believe them in these cases? Is it because Rebbe Lazar in general holds that a co-wife is believed regarding her other co-wife? So over here also, they're sister-in-laws, but they're sort of like co-wives because they could potentially be co-wives in situations of Yibam, and Rebbe Lazar just believes them? Or is it specifically because we understand that a person is not going to ruin themselves, and therefore if each one took the action to actually perform Yibam, that illustrates that what they are saying is true, that their husbands actually died, and therefore we believe them not only regarding for themselves, but we believe them in regards to their sister-in-law as well. And so the Gemara asks, what is the difference between these two approaches? And the Gemara says very simple. Let's say you have a situation, are you allowed to allow the co-wife to marry before she herself takes any action? As Rashi over here says, meaning in a regular case, would you allow the co-wife to remarry if she herself did not take action? Rashi explains the case. Let's say you have a case of a woman, she goes far away on a trip, together with her husband. Now she comes back and she says, my husband died. And let's say you have over a case, not a case of sister-in-laws. Let's say you have over here a case of a conventional co-wife. So now, can this co-wife, is she allowed to go ahead and get remarried based on the testimony of the other wife who was on the trip, before that actual wife who testified, before she gets remarried? And so now the Gemara explains the two sides. If you're going to say that Rebbe Lazar holds in general a co-wife can testify for her other co-wife, even though the woman herself who said her husband died, even though she herself didn't take action and get remarried, but still the co-wife can get remarried. We can use that testimony for the tzara. But if you're going to say Mishum Dehilo Mekalkal Navsha, it's because she would not ruin herself. So Insiv Minasvina and Lolatzara. So if she goes in and gets remarried, that serves as evidence that what she is saying is true. And then the co-wife can also get married. Ilo Insiv, but if she does not get married, Lo Minasvina and Lo, so then we're not going to allow the co-wife to marry also. And so the Gemara says, so what is the reasoning of Rebbe Lazar? And so the Gemara says, Tashma, come and hear a proof from the wording of the Mishnah. Rebbe Lazar Omer, it says that Rebbe Lazar says, Hoel v'hutru li'Yevamin, since they were allowed to marry those other brother-in-laws, again, those other brother-in-laws who eventually died, hutru l'chol adam, therefore they're both mutter to marry other people after. And so the Gemara says very simply, Yamr bishlam, if you're going to say correctly, dehilo mekalkal and after, that the reason is because she won't ruin herself. Hainu duchi insim minasavina. That's why, since she went ahead and got married and did Yibam, that's what allows them both to get remarried. But if you're going to say in general, Rebbe Lazar holds one co-wife can testify for a friend, so afagav the lo insiv nami, that should have been permitted even if they didn't go ahead and do Yibam and get married. Elashmami, no, rather, don't you see from here, time of the Rebbe Lazar, that the reason of Rebbe Lazar is mishum de insiv hu v'lo mekalkal anafshe, because she actually went ahead and got remarried and took action, and she wouldn't ruin herself, and that's why we're permitting them now both to go marry others. But the Gemara says, no, maybe it's not a proof. Rebbe Lazar ledivreim kamarlu. It could be that Rebbe Lazar is just responding to the Rabbanan according to their premise. And he's saying as follows, Lididi, according to me, it's for sure okay. Tzara midla chaverta, one co-wife can testify on behalf of her friend. V'afa gav de lo insiv, minasvinalo. Even if she doesn't go ahead herself and get remarried, the other one can get married. Ela liditchu, but at least according to you, oduli mias, at least you should admit to me, that where she actually goes ahead and marries herself, meaning if she goes ahead and takes action, so then we'll allow the co-wife to get married as well. Mishum dehi lo mekalkal anafshe, because she's not going to ruin herself. And maybe if you're going to understand it that way, v'rabbanan. So what do the Rabbanan respond to this? It seems like a strong argument. If she took action for herself, she should be believed even in regards to what her co-wife could do. So the Rabbanan will respond, no, tamas nafshi and plishtim hu dekavta. Again, the expression the Gemara used before, let me die with the plishtim, it means to say, I don't mind if I harm myself as long as I can also harm my enemy. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come in here the following proof to answer this question. We said earlier, let's say a woman, she and her husband go on a trip far away. And she comes and she says, my husband has died. So the halach is, she's allowed to remarry, she can take her ksuba. We believe her in terms of herself. But the co-wife, her co-wife is still asur. Rebellious says, since she is mutter, so the co-wife is also mutter, and it seems clear that the co-wife is mutter, even though she's taken absolutely no action. One co-wife is believed in regards to what the other co-wife can do. The Gemara says it's not a proof, Ema, because you can say the real phrasing is as follows: Hoel v'hutra v'nisis. Since she is permitted and she went ahead and got remarried, maybe Rebellious really means to say that she did take action. That's why her co-wife is mutter. But the Gemara still doesn't understand. We should be concerned as follows: Dilma begita asai. Maybe she really has a get. We don't know it. She's not publicizing it, but maybe she's really coming with a get from her husband, and so she's a divorcee, and so there's no problem with her remarrying. And that which she's saying, that the husband died, she's only trying to mess up her co-wife. Why should we believe her by the fact that she actually went and got remarried? Maybe she's getting remarried because she actually has received a get. And so the Gemara says, you're right. If she would have gotten married to Yisrael, that would be true. It's possible she got a get, and she really is just trying to destroy her co-wife. But here, what's the case? The insiv l'kohen. She actually went ahead and got married to a kohen. That proves she is not a divorcee, and therefore the co-wife also is allowed to get married. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Ein me'idin el al parts of ponim im hachotim. When we testify about a dead body, we try to identify who it is. We can only testify if you can see the face with the nose. Afal pi sheyesh simonin begufo, even though there are certain signs on its body, uvekelav, or on its clothing, that is not going to be enough. Ein me'idin el ad sheteitze nafsho. We can't testify that someone died until the person actually died. Ve'afilu ra'uhu meguyad v'tzolav. Even if you saw the person was cut open or he was crucified, that is not going to be enough. You have to know that the person actually died. Even if you see that the wild animal is eating him, again, the same thing, you have to know that the person actually died. Ein me'idin ela ad gimel yomim. We only testify about the body until 3 days. After 3 days already it decomposes so much that it is difficult to identify the body. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says, Lo kol ha'adam v'lo kol ha'makom v'lo kol ha'shos shavin. Not all people, not all places, and not all times are the same. Decomposition takes place at different rates, and you have to evaluate each case independently. And we'll take a look at Rashi over here in Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Omer, Lo kol ha'adam v'chulu, yesh lach adam shememar li nafeach mishar adam kagon adam shamein. You have some people, they'll swell up faster, let's say a heavier person. V'yesh lach makom shecham no gazbo yoster. Some places, you'll have a situation where there's more sun. The person's going to be faster to decompose. Sometimes there are certain times of the year that the world is hotter, and that causes the body to decompose faster. Now the Gemara will ask, is Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava coming to be stricter than the Tanakama, or is he coming to be more lenient? And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Padachas v'lo parts of ponim. Let's say they see the forehead and not the face. Parts of ponim v'lo padachas. Let's say they see the face and not the forehead. Ein me'idin, they can't testify on that. Ad shiyu shneim im hachotim, unless they see both of them together with the nose. Amar Abaya v'itemer Rav Kahana. Abaya says, and some people say Rav Kahana says, My kro, where do we see this in the pasuk? Hakaras paneim unsabam. It says that the recognition of their faces is evidence, is witness against them. So you see again that it's only from the face that you can really determine who the person is. Abba bar Marasa, Duhu Abba bar Menyume, Abba bar Marasa, who was also known as Abba bar Menyume, Havamaski Bey, Devei Reish Galusa Zuze, the people of the house of the exilarch, he owed them money. Icy Kira, so he took some wax, Davak Bevalyasa, he put it on some worn out cloth, Davak Bapusa, he put it all over his forehead, Cholav Kamayu, he walked by them, Velo Bishakaruha, and they weren't able to recognize him. So again, from there you see as well that if they can't see the forehead, or if you change the forehead, it's difficult to recognize the individual. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Afa Pishayesh Simonin V'chulu, even if the witnesses have Simonim to identify the body, that is not going to be enough. The Gemara says, L'meimra de Simonin lav doraisa. Do you mean to say that Simonim are not doraisa? You can't rely on them according to the Torah. Urimini, we have the following contradiction from a brisa. Matzu kosher b'kis uviarniki uvitabas. Let's say if the person finds the get and it's tied with a wallet or with a purse or by a ring. Oshenimtzu bein kelev, or it's found among his vessels. Afilu lizman meruba, even if it's after a long time, kosher, it's still kosher. In other words, it seems to be you're allowed to rely on these simonim when it comes to identifying the get. And so the Gemara answers, Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Lo kash, it's not difficult. Ha Rabbi Eliezer ben Mahavoy, ha Rabbanan. In one case, we're following the Tana Rabbi Eliezer ben Mahavoy. In one case, the Rabbanan. There's actually a machlokus about this very issue, whether we can rely on Simonim according to the Torah or not. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brayso, Ein me'idin al hashuma. You're not allowed to testify. Let's say there's a mole in order to identify the dead body. You want to testify on that. The Tana Kama says that's not a good identification. Rabbi Eliezer ben Mahavoy Omer. Rabbi Eliezer ben Mahavoy says, me'idin, no, you are allowed to testify. That is a good siman. My lab, hakamiflagi, isn't this the machlokus? Demar savar simon and doraisa. One holds simonim are doraisa. Umar savar simon and dorabonon. The other one holds simonim are dorabonon. Amar Rava says no. The kuli alma simon and doraisa. Actually, everybody agrees simonim are doraisa. Hacha b'shuma mitzuya beven gilo kamiflagi. Here they're arguing: is it possible to find a mole on another person that's similar to this? In other words, is this really a good identifying mark? Mar savar shuma mitzuya beven gilo. One says these kinds of moles, they can be found on somebody who was born, as Rashi says, in the same mazel, someone of similar age, etc. That person can have the same mark, so it's not a good siman. Umar savar eina mitzuya beven gilo, and the other one holds no, it's not something that's going to be common, and therefore it is going to be a good siman. Again, that's going to be the shita of Rabbi Eliezer ben Mahavoy. Viko diamri, some have a slightly different version. Hacha b'shumo hasui l'ishtanos lachar misa kamiflagi. What they're actually arguing about, the Tanakam and Rabbi Eliezer ben Mahavoy, is whether or not this mole will change after the person dies. Mar savar hasui l'ishtanos lachar misa. One says it's likely that it will change after the death, and therefore you can't rely on it. Umar savar eino hasui l'ishtanos lachar misa. The other one holds it's not likely to change, and therefore you can rely on it. Viko diamri, some have another version of the answer. Amar Rava says the kuli alma simonim derabanan. Actually, everybody agrees that in general simonim are only derabanan. V'hacha b'shuman, here we're talking about a mole. And we'll take a look at a few Rashis over here. Matzu kasher hamevi get liisha v'yavad heimenu. Again, the case is the person is delivering a get and then it gets lost. Bein kelev, he finds it among his kelim. Bein klei beso, among the vessels of his house. U'makares hakisves hatabash shein shelo kasher. He recognizes, let's say, the wallet. He recognizes the ring that it's his. So then it's kasher. V'lo chashinan dil mahai kis v'hai tabas dinish achrina havu. We don't say, oh, maybe the kiss or the tabas belongs to someone else. V'hai geracher, and this is a different get. Alma samchinan ha-simona. So you see that we do rely on simonim. The islay bekis of arniki, those simonim that he has on the kiss or the arniki are reliable. The afilu lemishri iser eshasish doraisa. And this is a doraisa situation because we're saying the get is kosher and it's going to permit this woman who's an eshasish. Alma simonim doraisa. So you see that simonim are doraisa. Again, ben gilo, when it comes to the mole, somebody who's shenoled beperek echad, they're born around the same time with a mazel echad under one mazel. Rebbe Elazar ben Mahavoy savar ein shuma mitzuya beven gilo. Rebbe Elazar ben Mahavoy says no, that's not so likely, and so therefore this is considered to be a good siman. Lishtanos mimara, again, it's going to change after the person dies maybe, so that's why it wouldn't be a good siman. And then in the other version of Rava says everyone holds siman derabanan. V'lo darish afa simla l'siman. You don't darshan from the pasuk afa simla the idea of siman. Ela l'tovin dasam plugsi. It's actually a machlokus over there in Baba Metzia in terms of whether simanim are doraisa or derabanan. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Chaf Amud Beis.